What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today, we're sitting down with my brother, Nate Harpster. He was on the podcast with us back in episode 12, so if you want to hear more from him, scroll on back to episode 12. But today we get caught up. We're talking about health and wellness and things we can do to improve our bodies, our minds, and our souls. So without further ado, Nate Harpster, check it out.
Kind of birthed a couple, and we had one that was a failure to thrive deal. So I've actually milked an alpaca.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What's that like?
I don't know. I mean, it's like milking a cow, I guess, with the little smaller udder or teat, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went nurse. So we had to get some milk out and kind of bottle feed this thing, and then eventually transition it back to mama. It was kind of crazy, and now
That's
we have that one at our house now.
Well, hey, I mean, if you're gonna be a farm owner, you gotta do farm stuff.
Yeah. So we think we got a pregnant one, and
oh wow,
yeah, it's interesting. We got a new lamb for my daughter, and that was sick this weekend. Went to a lamb show in Douglas and came back. And
did you say a lamb show?
Yeah, a Selah show.
That's even a thing.
Oh, totally. With she's an FFA.
Okay.
So we buy a lamb, or she bought a lamb from her winnings from last year.
Cool.
And then, go to these shows all over the state. And as it gets bigger, they're all like prep shows, but you can win money and place and be, champion of that show and get some accolades and whatnot.
Yeah. And I imagine you think about the amount of learning that she's doing, participating in that.
She's actually an officer in the FFA at her at Highland. She's the Sentinel.
Oh, she goes to Highland High School?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Stupid little factoid, but my wife did her student teaching way back in the day at Highland High School.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
cool. Yeah, that's where she's at, and she loves it. She loves the animals, so
nice.
It's, par for the course at our house.
Nice. Well, I should probably introduce the episode. So I'm sitting. So for those of you listening, we've already started recording, obviously. But I'm sitting with Nate Harpster, famous. I'm trying to figure out. I'm looking on my phone here, trying to figure out what episode number.
Oh, it was way back.
Yeah. Do you remember what episode number it was?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I remember it was at my house at the farm.
Yes, it was. I met your alpacas.
You did.
Oh my heavens. Well,
yeah, it was back.
Know this.
Look way back.
Look in the show notes. I'll put it in the show notes,
There
but
you
right
go.
now I can't find it. It's in the show notes,
Perfect.
folks. Nate, if you want to know a little bit more about Nate and about the family farm, some more details, episode, whatever, see the show notes. It's in there.
Yeah, go check out Harpster Farm on Instagram. You can see
Yes.
the farm. I'm not I haven't, full disclosure, I've been slacking a little bit on that one.
What does that mean? Oh, on the page?
Yeah, I haven't been posting as much. My wife's been like, "Hey, let's go."
Yeah, you got to. My understanding is that if you want social media to be robust, you have to be posting.
You do
regularly.
You definitely do. And I think you see that in the fire service now. It was kind of a what's the word? It was not so accepted a few freaking months ago. It seems like, and then all of a sudden, lately I've seen a huge flood of social media. It's almost like someone went, you know what, this is a great way to reach out to people, show them what we're doing, and as long as you're doing it in a positive way,
right?
Letting the public see that, hey, we just don't sit around and wait for a call. We're actually doing stuff all day long. We're not going just sitting at the boys club and playing ping pong and whatnot.
Sometimes we're doing dances on TikTok.
Sometimes I have done that, not on TikTok, but I've done a little dance on the IG. But
Right. Well, hey, every industry there is a little bit of downtime, and when you're at a workspace for 24 hours at a pump, at least, right? Some folks are there longer. You're going to have some downtime where you need to do a little recreation. It's good for your mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, you have to get out of that space, and
But I do understand why people are afraid of that. right?
Right.
Because you're putting imagery out there, like it looks like you're not doing anything,
Right.
Because you're not taking the camera with you and doing, you're not filming on calls necessarily.
Right.
You might be, but you're running all kinds of incidents, doing all kinds of work that goes unrecorded. So the image that people take away with them is that you sit around the firehouse making up TikToks.
Right. And I think that's pretty important for anybody that's on or coming on. It's, and I'm certainly guilty of it. I've done some buffoonery on my social media, but the general message on my page is fitness, is showing what we do at the station. Like I'll video sometimes on the way to a call, just set my phone up and on the way to a call, catch a little bit of the fire, catch a little bit of the radio traffic, just little things that kind of show the 24-hour life of what we do. And I think it's important, like even if it's just washing the truck at the grocery store, checking out, like all these different little things. There's and it's not just a picture. If you can get people engaged and read a little bit or have something there that is of value, I think it'd be a pretty powerful tool. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I think there's so much about what we do that people don't understand. And so when we can share a little bit about it and, some positive messaging and make it enjoyable. I think it was Ashley Losh who was on here a few episodes back, who was talking about the showing people, you're building an audience, right? So you're showing people the fun stuff. You're getting them attracted to the page by being a little bit silly, a little bit funny and entertaining. And that once you have that audience, now when you bring a real message to the table, you already have their attention.
Definitely.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. And, the amount of content you're fighting for bandwidth in people's lives, right? And
oh, yeah.
So you got to be putting out a lot of content. And so, in order to get that time when you start pushing out a message. So, so speaking of which, a lot of let's talk specifically about some of the stuff that you're doing. Because a lot of I think back to Fireground Fitness's initial dabbles way back in 2007. That was my objective, was to start pushing out fitness information, right? Here's us working out in the firehouse. Here's something you can do in your firehouse with limited equipment, with access. And I feel like people have really, not because of me, but because of just the social media and what firefighters are doing across the country, have bit into that, right? And are doing skills courses and are doing activities that are work specific, right? Directed toward work hardening. And that's something that, you've been doing a lot of too, and commingled with a couple of injuries you've had. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because there's a mindset that you have to have in order to survive injuries in a healthy way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think Ryan Anderson, he told me this. I was doing a breathwork session at his place, and he said, injury's a great teacher. And I'm like, dang it, you know what? You're right, man. Like, each time I've had a small injury, I should say, especially this last time with my shoulder injury, I really kind of dove deep into how can I make this a positive experience, because it's a longer injury.
How did you hurt
6 months? Initially bench pressing, and I warmed up. I was just doing high reps and felt a little give out in my shoulder. Ended up stopping. Had it looked at our health center, and then was throwing ladders at the academy, and felt it give out. And I'm like, dang it, I knew something was up. I had the MRI done, and had a tear in the rotator cuff. So they ended up actually putting, I think, 4 anchors in and then a mesh over top of those, because the doc was like, it's a mess. We need to.
Interestingly, so do you think that maybe you had heard it earlier? Why was it such a mess?
I think the wear and tear on our bodies in general, in the fire service is we get microdosed all the time with all these things, pull and sealing, especially in the academy, pull and sealing through plywood, and that, no warm up. I mean, that can start tearing you up, and just over time, I think you start degrading I think we underestimate the amount of overhead work that we do.
Yeah.
Even reaching up with our bottles on, throwing bottles behind us, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, there's a lot that you think about the capsule, the shoulder capsule, and that acromion and that space. It's a very small space.
Right.
The margins in there are tiny. And so when you put an SCBA on your back and you wear a turnout coat, it restricts that shoulder. And then when you bring your arms up, you're creating tension in that space and compression in that joint. So it stands to reason, especially when you're taking a pike pole and you're thrusting it up into a ceiling.
Right.
Like even let's think a house fire and somebody's laid plywood up in there and you run your pike pole into heavy plywood with a bunch of stuff on top of it, or lath and plaster or something like that.
A killer.
That puts a tremendous load back into a shock load back into the shoulder joints, and in your whole body. It can be quite. It can shock your whole system.
Oh, totally. And I'm not a big guy. I mean, I shoot, so I'm really reliant on my physical fitness, on just doing whatever I can when I'm pulling ceilings. Sometimes I'm putting everything I have into it, pulling down, and using some of the extra weight from my pack and everything to my advantage.
Hanging on that pike pole.
Hey, I can't say it hasn't happened. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so through this past injury, I've really kind of dove deep in how can I make this a positive experience. And I think that's super important mindset to have when guys get injured. I mean, I'm like anybody else. I think when you truly love the job, you want to be back on the truck as fast as possible. But you have the dichotomy of, hey, getting back fast and getting back well. And I want to be back well. And in that time, what am I going to do? I'm going to focus my energy on, getting myself better physically, but that being gone mentally is wearing. So what else can I focus on? And this one in particular, I kind of dove into the cold plunge, into the sauna, breath work, some other ventures that I decided to partake in, which I'm sure we'll talk about down the road. But
was all of your was your premise was all the mental health aspect of it, or were you looking at the physiological benefits of like cold plunge, for example, and breath work?
Kind of that whole 360 approach, because I don't think you can necessarily look at cold plunge, meditation, sauna, and just say it just has a physical benefit. You can't look at it and just say it has a mental benefit. It has both. It opens a lot of doors physically for you. You can heal faster, and also you get some time in your own head, and that can be scary. But that is no, I think it's huge, and what it's taught me to do is kind of, hey, slow down a little bit and take some time for yourself. I think we get so busy every day in our jobs, like, working overtime, like what's next, instead of, hey, let's just be in the moment for a minute here.
I've been trying to add meditation into my life and yoga. And one of the things, one of the positions in yoga is at the very end, you basically lay on your back in a corpse pose, just flat on your back, let your arms and feet hang out, and just relax and lay there. And I'm following a YouTube lady the other day, a yogi, and she's like, some people think this is the hardest pose in yoga. And I'm like, how could it be the hardest pose? You're just laying here completely still. And then she says, because you feel like you're wasting your time. Like you're doing nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to sit when life is so busy and full of things that we need to get done. I'm throwing up air quotes here that need to be done, that we're hurtling around trying to get stuff accomplished. And the act of sitting still becomes, so I want to say irritating, but it's so challenging and difficult to do. And setting aside a time for that quiet in contemplation or just stillness or nothingness is very restorative, but super hard to do.
It is. It's real hard to do. and I definitely struggle with it. You're sitting there and your mind wants to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it's just ingrained in us forever, that we just need to be thinking about what's next. And there's a space in there in your mind that is longing to not think about anything. And I think there's a lot of stuff you can find out about yourself in that space, and that's why I like the cold plunge so much. Like cold plunge is you get in there. Mine is pretty much set right around 38 degrees. It just depends. Someday it's colder depending on the weather outside, but that's still plenty cold. I mean, I had ice in it the other day. So a couple things. When you think about getting in there, your mind is telling you no. So for me in the morning, win number one is just getting in, because your mind and your body doesn't want to get in there because it knows for those first few minutes are miserable. So you push past that barrier of, I don't care what my mind thinks, I'm doing this. So that to me is a super important aspect of cold plunge in general. And then once you're in there, you have to work on your breath. You have to kind of just push everything out because your body is screaming to get out pretty much. It's like, it's not natural, at least for us in our current state of comfort, continuous comfort. It's not natural to sit in there. Right. And all you can think about is just working on your breath, getting it regulated down to a slow rate. And there's the point that you go from that, it takes not necessarily panic, but it's just taking your breath away to where you transition into this like super calm breathing cycle. And that right there is kind of like a beautiful part of that whole experience, because you have this transition paradigm shift in your probably physiology as well, where your heart rate's up, and then boom, it starts to come on down, and you just get into a meditative state. And I got to tell you, I don't think about anything else in that cold plunge except for just my breath, closing my eyes, and just get into my own mind. That's the only thing I can think of. And I think the cold is a great way to do that.
Interesting. Well, you're so hyper focused on the current moment, right? Which is such an important thing, right? To be present and mindful of where you are right now in the given moment. That's a tremendous exercise in and of itself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we have a tendency to long for the past and to worry about the future.
Right.
But yet you're in a moment.
Totally.
Right? Be present with the people around you and yourself. That takes practice. And I do want to give everyone, and myself included, a little grace, right? When you talk about trying to meditate and how hard it is to focus on nothing, right? Or to focus on just your breath, while with thoughts come pummeling in and work their way into your vision, into your mind. That's the practice.
Yeah.
Right? That's the hard work.
That's why it's called a practice.
Exactly.
No one sits there the first time and has a transformative experience and is like, well, man, I'm now this great, yogi or, like Yoda of whatever, I mean, it takes time. And I think that translates into anything. Like, things take time. Like, have some patience. If your goal is to, meditate every morning, it's okay if you slip up and get knocked out of that meditative state and start thinking about something else. Like, okay, go back in. It's okay if you miss a day. Like, fitness wise, like, you just gotta, you gotta stay the course. I think it was Jocko always says, stay the course, stay the course. I tell people, no matter what your goal is, I kind of relate it to fitness a lot, but it's not like the first drop of sweat or the second or even the third that you see change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all those cumulative drops in that bucket. The bucket's overflowing, can't take one more drop. That's where you realize change. It takes freaking time.
Yeah.
So give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
And don't give up. It might be 4 months. It might be a year. And then finally you're like, whoa, check this out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that process is a beautiful thing. And you learn a lot about yourself in that process.
Yeah. It's interesting. The building the habit of doing things like that, right? Is right. The consistency is what's important. And so I think getting that habit to be repeated, you have to change your mindset. Where, for example, like someone who is going to do, like, I want to try doing cold plunges. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to try this thing. And so if you want this to become habitual, you have to say to yourself, I'm a person who does cold plunges. Like,
totally. Atomic Habits.
That's who I am.
That's the book, Atomic Habits, right there.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just listening to it in Audible. And in fact, on the way here. And that is totally it. They were talking about two people that were smokers. And one person says, I'm trying to quit. The other one says, I'm not a smoker. It's a mind game,
right.
But you start making that decision,
right.
That drives you towards your goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so it's funny when we think about you said mind game. To me, the game is that we're playing this aspect that we're going to wrestle with it. But to me, the mind is so powerful. Don't play a game with it.
Yeah.
Be who you want to be.
Right.
Right. And have a clear vision for who you want to be. Mm-hmm. And I think, it takes time to arrive at that. And until you decide what you want for yourself, until you have that honest conversation with who you are and what you want,
right,
you're not going to be able to build those habits.
No.
It takes a deliberate focus and practice and say, no, this is what I want. This is who I am.
Totally. And you have to have a why, right? You can't, no matter where you are in life, I don't think you can't spell out your own story without a why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to have a driving force that really bites you, that really moves you, because otherwise you won't do it. You're fall prey to what other people are saying. Mm-hmm. You're fall prey to distraction. That why is like it's and I said this in my speech at the Xendurance Summit. I said that why is the hottest and longest burning fuel you will ever have. No one can take it from you. No one can put it out. That's it.
Yeah. I think of it in terms of purpose.
Sure. Purpose. Yep.
Right. Purpose versus motivation. So I can watch a Rocky Balboa movie.
Right.
And
get pumped.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And I'm like, yeah. And that gets me fired up.
Right.
But motivation is fleeting.
Totally.
When things get hard and now it's uncomfortable. If I'm not a person who tackles hard things,
right,
and now it's getting uncomfortable, I'm going to fall apart.
Right.
And my commitment to X is going to fall away. Unless I think about it in terms of what is my greater purpose here? I'm a person who gets up and goes to the gym.
Yep.
Why? Because I want to maintain a robust capacity on the fire ground, right?
Absolutely.
Or I want to be able to crawl around on the ground with my grandkids, or I want to be able to, whatever it is, right? Like, what is your purpose? And then you hang your behaviors on that purpose, right? Here's why we do these things.
Yeah.
And that's so much more sustainable than just saying, okay, I'm gonna get out of bed in the morning and go to the gym. Like, so take the Jocko example, right? Mm-hmm. Where he's like,
5 a.m.
I just go.
Yeah.
Like, I just do it. There's not a question.
Right. But I think he has a purpose. When you listen to him,
mm-hmm.
like, he thinks he's still locked in, rightfully so, to that Navy SEAL, that enemy. Like, there's somebody else up preparing to do me harm. I'm going to get up and I'm going to beat that person to the punch.
Right.
That's his mindset. That's his purpose.
Right. But do you think there's ever a question where he's like, should I work out today?
I'm sure. He's human.
Right. But my point is that I don't think there's that question for him anymore. He might be like, today's going to suck.
But that's the win. And that's what I'm talking about in getting in that cold plunge when you don't want to.
Right.
That's your win right there for That's the only thing you win for the day, then freaking good on you, man.
Right.
Like you don't want to work out, but you go and you grind out anyways.
Right.
That is a win. I don't care if you go and you do 10 push-ups, you've done something. You've made yourself do something.
Yeah.
That is a win. So people who think, well, I didn't do enough today, like they're in their at whatever point they are in their journey, that is a win. They need to look at that and say, shit, yeah, man, that was a tough day, but I did something.
Yeah.
Because they're going to compound that the next time. And I think it's important. It's discipline. Jocko talks all about discipline. Discipline is freedom, equals freedom, you know. And I forget, I think it's Tony, someone says, like, there's anything you do comes with some sort of weight to it, right? So you got the weight of discipline and the weight of regret.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to say discipline is ounces and regret is tons. Like, which one do you want to live with? You know, for me, I don't want regret. You never want to look back and go, I should have, you know, or what would have happened.
Yeah.
And I've done that plenty of times where you look back like 6 months, you go, man, if I would just stuck to this, I'd be here now. And now I'm not. I got to start over. Like, it's like I just wasted some time.
Yeah.
You know,
I think the challenge is to not let that stop us.
True.
Right? Because so many times we're like, well, I would be in better shape now if I'd have just started working out 6 months ago, but I didn't. And so here I am. Well, now I guess I'm going to be, you know, a fat toad.
Nope. Yeah. You got to use that as a lesson. And you know, it's cliche, but true. I mean, failure is a great teacher. When you, and if you don't take it as a lesson, then you're just totally missing out on a great catalyst for any sort of change in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid to fail, you're totally missing out. Things do not have to be perfect. You cannot, you know, strive for perfection in everything. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. I think that's a very important thing to remember, is that the overwhelming majority of successful people have had strings of failures. And the thing they share in common is the willingness to get back to the drawing board, to start over, to re-engage, and not let the failure define them, but recognize that that's an opportunity to learn, like we talked about, and to grow from that event. So, you know, when I think about my own life, that's every time I've had a failure or a perceived failure, right? An opportunity that wasn't granted me for whatever reason. When I reflected on that years later, things always grew out of those opportunities, or grew out of those, well, I call them opportunities, but out of those tragedies, right? Out of those difficulties.
I think that's important what you said. You said opportunities. You associated a failure with an opportunity, and it is. It totally is. I mean, that was my story with getting on the Phoenix Fire Department. I mean, we touched on this before on our last podcast, but, you know, I lived in Buffalo, flying back and forth. I went through a couple processes flying back and forth, and obviously failed. So I could have just packed it up and sat there and said, well, it's not for me, you know. But
you got to get out of Buffalo.
I got to get out of Buffalo. No, I love Buffalo. Shout out to Bills Mafia. I love Buffalo, but it was, I wasn't going to give up. And what I learned in that process was, I don't think I can do this from here. You know, I've gone back and forth. I'm not making the connections I need to. I sat back and got perspective on the whole thing and said, I need to move there, and I need to go all in, and I need to take a bigger risk and have at it. And that's, you know, what happens. Had I just said, well, failed a couple times, that's it.
Yeah.
Who knows what the heck I'd be doing now.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I want to say, though, to everybody listening and is that it's okay to be disappointed. Yeah. Right? Because failure hurts, because you put energy into it. But at the same time, give yourself a little bit of time to let the sting wear off, and then be self-aware enough and be honest with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Who was it who said, to thine own self be true? Is that Shakespeare? Who said that?
Shoot, you got me, man.
Yeah. Anyways, some philosopher said,
Yeah.
to thine own self be true, right? I'm so ignorant.
Hey, no judgment.
So, but that resonates in my mind, right? If you're not honest with yourself about your performance and sitting back and really reassessing, and I'm thinking about promotional processes, events, bike races, whatever it is that you've done in your life, right, where you've had a moment where you did not like the outcome, go back and reconsider what it was that you brought to the table. Were you fully present? Were you fully engaged? Were you fully prepared?
Totally.
Did you bring everything you needed to the table?
Yeah.
And if you're not honest about that, you're never going to progress.
Oh, I 100% agree. There's it's in a ton of stories. I'm sure everybody's heard it, but you cannot, You cannot be disappointed with the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do, whatever it is.
Yes, I love that.
Like
That's exactly right.
I mean, it totally makes sense. And I've used that on my kids.
Yeah.
I've used it in my own life, and absolutely that pain, take it and then learn from it and be honest with it. Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's part of the lesson.
So I'm going to switch gears in here. So I'm going to go back. We talked about, you mentioned breath work.
Yeah.
And are you following kind of a Wim Hof method, or what are you doing?
Yeah. And I'm honest. I don't every day do Wim Hof. But what my morning routine has been is the cold plunge, come out, get my feet in the grass a little bit, get a little bit of vitamin D on the skin. I don't dry off. I just stand there and do just some movement and breath work, a little bit of yoga stuff.
When you say movement and breath work, what does that look like in combination?
So just kind of like yoga movements.
Okay.
Just kind of, move with your breath.
Okay.
Okay. And then a few times a week, I will do Wim Hof breathing, and that's one of those things too. Like, sometimes I don't want to do that, but I feel so good after. It is such a cool experience. And to me, there's a little bit of that competitive edge to it. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but to see how long I can hold my breath with, well, I guess not hold your breath. It's a retention with no air. Right. So, you have a little kind of scorecard, I guess. That I try to get to. And I mean, I implore anybody to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I have dabbled with it on and off over the last few years. And when I'm serious about it and I go through a full session with fidelity,
right. Yeah.
It is phenomenal. It feels good. Totally. I sleep better.
Yes.
I perform better. Like sometimes I'll do it in the morning before my day starts.
Yeah.
And then I go through the day and I just feel great.
Yeah.
And then doing it before I go to bed, same thing. I fall right to sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's
well,
amazing.
I think it, and I don't know the physiology behind it all. Probably not the right person to talk on that point, but I know it works on your central nervous system, your sympathetic, parasympathetic, and kind of helps reset it. For me, I got to tell you this. We were talking about one of the staff coming over and seeing my animals and having a migraine. I get them very infrequently. But every time I have recently, I've done Wim Hof breathing, and I've totally knocked it down to a bearable point. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And I don't know. I've told a couple of people about it, and I'm like,
yeah,
it worked.
I did an episode with Ben Dubin a while back.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know what it is. I'll put it in the show notes.
There you go.
Remember,
everything's in the show notes.
It's in the show notes. Nobody ever reads the show notes. I don't actually think. Yeah. But anyways,
they're going to want to on this one. I'm going to give them a discount code or something. So
okay,
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah.
So Ben is a Wim Hof instructor.
Yes.
And he walked us
Tempe
through.
fireman, right?
Yep, he's a Tempe firefighter, and he walked us through, of course, a bunch about the physiology of it, et cetera. So if you want to get into the brass tacks of it, go listen to that episode with Ben. I did a part 2 where he sat us down and we went and did a session.
I listened to it.
It's great. So if you want to follow along and have Ben kind of walk you through a session, it's pretty cool.
You should.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's doing breath work it's one of those things that feels kind of woo-woo for a lot of people.
Totally. And I was going to say that. Yeah, you're right.
But I think there's physiological benefits. And I think as a firefighter specifically, the ability to manage your air and have a tool that you've practiced, because air management can get really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you want is to be in a horrible shit sandwich. How many times can I say that bad? Be in a bad place and be panicking and not able to control. Absolutely. So it's something that you can practice and work on. Mm-hmm. And I think it adds to our survivability.
100% does. And I was reading, or I read the book, The Oxygen Advantage, a while back about nasal breathing and how that can help increase your VO2 max, stuff like that. And Wim Hof, all these things that help you manage your air, help you get in your own head to calm yourself down, help. And I've done, people go check out my page, somewhere in there, you'll just see some numbers written on a whiteboard. And when I do my skills courses, right, I time myself on air every so often. And what I'll do is I will give a time to when my vibra alert goes off, or when it starts vibrating, I should say, to when it stops vibrating, and then to when I'm completely out of air. And I saw an improvement in my air management from doing nasal breathing, from doing Wim Hof. It was plain as day. It was in the numbers, So I think, it's important. And that's not just sitting there. That's working, not that we're supposed to, but working through your vibra alert till it goes off. In my mind, when I'm doing stuff like that, I'm thinking, what am I doing to simulate like I'm trapped and nobody's coming for me? Like, how am I doing this? How can I use all this air? How much air do I have?
Right.
So as that vibra alert's going, I'm moving, I'm going under trucks, I'm taking my pack off, I'm, using our wall to quote unquote breach through and get through, put my pack back on, keep moving, and then at the end when there's nothing, I'm sitting there just, when that totally stops, because you've been working that whole time, so you're amped up. Now I got to sit there and manage those last few breaths of air. Like, how long can you make that last? I think training like that is super important. Even if you just have your pack on, we know there's a lot of info that just came out about our turnouts, right? Even if you just have your pack on, okay, and practice air management, I think there's no workaround for that. We have to do that in our profession. So all these different modalities that seem woo-woo, like you said, certainly play into the fire service. And I think we need to drop that macho woo-woo idea that this stuff doesn't work.
Right.
Because it does.
Yeah. Yeah. So physiological benefits aside, the mental aspects of discipline, to be able to control your breath when you are hypoxic and you are in an uncomfortable position is really important. And that is it's something you can exercise and train. And so you have to work on that. You have to apply it. It's something that we don't, specifically address, right?
No,
when
we
you're
don't.
Doing back and buys.
Yeah.
You
need to listen, you need to exercise your mind. You need to, it's just, I don't know, maybe it's more important than your body. I mean, so at some respects, I think it is, because the strongest people break. I mean, you talk to or listen to Jocko or any of these people talk about the Navy SEALs, like the biggest, baddest, can I say motherfucker out there?
You just did.
Okay, I just did. In their class will be the first to ring the damn bell.
Right. Because
they don't have the mental fortitude and capacity to get through these things, these pains, these little sneaky, like mosquito gnat things over and over again hitting you. Can't deal with it. They can't do it. Yeah, they can deadlift 600, 700, 800 pounds, But those little things, like the little bit of cold or the little bit of sleep deprivation, and that just can't do it. So you need a robust mind. You need a robust body.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's important. I mean, and we deal with so much crap on this job. You know, and I've seen that coming back to being injured. Like my sleep has been so dialed in.
Yeah.
A lot of the frustrations with certain calls I haven't had to deal with, obviously. Like I feel good, you know, I just, man, it's nice to step back and take a break and to see that. And then that's kind of like the reset. Like, now how am I going to manage this when I go forward, when I come back to the truck? Because I'm looking forward to coming back to the truck.
Right.
You know,
so what's your plan? So you mentioned sleep, and sleep deprivation is a big part of our health and wellness that is problematic.
Oxidative stress. I mean, that sleep deprivation, our eating, our stress, our all the exposures that we have to our carcinogens, like our oxidative stress is through the roof. And I think you see that play out in you know, the increased cancer rates, even as people leave the job. You know, you see guys get sick and not be able to enjoy their retirement. Mm-hmm. And that's really been a huge catalyst for me. My dad passed away in 2008 at 60 years old from esophageal cancer. He didn't drink to excess at all, you know, drink here or there, didn't smoke, was quote unquote, air quotes again, healthy by American standards, you know, and that was kind of my catalyst to be like, dang, you know, my dad died at a young age in my mind, and he didn't have half the exposures that I have. Like, what am I doing to mitigate that? You know, so that's where fitness comes in. That's where eating right comes in. That's, you know, a whole bunch of the supplementation. You know, I'll give a shout out to Xendurance, right? Their extreme endurance or their essential product, you know, clinically proven to reduce oxidative stress by 39% in 10 days. Like, every firefighter should have this stuff in their bag. I mean, you're going to increase your VO2 max too, decrease creatine kinase, like all these things that are performance improvements, but also has an impact on longevity is just huge, you know. And I think it's definitely not a one-tiered look. We can't do that. We can't just say, "Oh, dude, I'm in the gym, I'm good."
Right.
Like, you have to look at it as a 360 approach. Like, what am I eating? How's my family life? How's my mental health? You know, exercise, supplementation. It's just super important to have that whole approach, you know, because we go to the station, we eat like shit most of the time, you know, and I think comes back to atomic habits a little bit is how are we programmed? When we go to the station, what's the first thing we do in the morning? You know, obviously we put our gear on, check off the truck. Then we go in and we sit down and we eat whatever's left over from the night before. You know, we see what kind of desserts are right there left over from the night before. You know, and I'm not saying that's a problem once in a while, but again, it's the microdosing over a career, over 30 years of shitty eating habits. Again, bad habits. You know, it's like you get to the station, I want to see what's there. I'm going to shove a bunch of crap down my pie hole first thing in the morning, you know, and then same thing, like late at night, I see guys, you know, grabbing all this sugary stuff right before bed. I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, man, it's not a good idea. Like, we need to have that paradigm shift of how do we want to enjoy ourselves after our job? Like, I remember day one and being so damn excited for my career. Like, let's go. Yeah. You know, I've come to the point in my career now where, I still love the job, but the day that I hang up my turnout coats and walk out the door, I want to have that same excitement. Yeah, let's go and enjoy my freaking retirement, enjoy my family, see my girls grow up, play with my grandkids. All that stuff is super important to me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that it takes work and it takes discipline.
So let's talk about something people can do today, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the sleep deprivation thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just got done reading a book called Why We Sleep.
Yeah, Matthew Walker.
Yeah, that's exactly right. PhD Matthew Walker,
Yeah.
Dr. Walker.
Dr. Walker.
Great book.
Yeah.
And so I started taking a look, and now I'm working in staff, right? So you should think, oh, hey, every night you're in your own bed, you should be able to sleep. But I will tell you that after 24 years on the job, I don't sleep. I sleep like crap. And so I had to do an evaluation, right? What exactly am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
I'm in my own bed every single night right now. Why am I not sleeping?
Sleep hygiene, right?
Yeah. So I did a self-assessment, and I said, okay, so when I get up in the morning and I'm headed to go train, I crack a Monster, right? I drink some water, but I'm also cracking a Monster. And then midday comes with lunch, I'll have a Coke Zero, right? Because that's my jam. And then evening time, I'm sitting down for dinner, come home from work. Guess what's with dinner? Another Coke Zero.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching TV with my beautiful wife in the evening, and guess what? Sipping another Coke Zero right before bed.
Yeah.
So, first of all, that's a whole lot of caffeine. Completely.
Does Coke Zero have caffeine?
Oh, yeah.
Just no sugar.
There's no sugars.
Yeah. So caffeine.
Tons of caffeine, right, throughout the whole day. Okay. And you think, oh, well, I've been inoculated to it. I've been drinking all this caffeine for years and years.
Yep.
And then all the other little things. But let's just focus on the caffeine for a second. So what I did after reading Matthew's book was I eliminated caffeine after noon.
Beautiful.
So in the morning, I still do my little morning routine every once in a while. I've tried to taper that off as well. But by noon, no more caffeine after noon. Immediate results.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm sleeping through the night. And I'm actually dreaming, which is, I told my wife for years, I'm like, I don't think I have dreams. And she's like, of course you have dreams. I'm like, I don't think I do. But if I wasn't remembering them.
Right.
And my sleep cycles were so crappy. I was tossing and turning, throwing covers all over the place, rolling around all night, waking up feeling like a bag of smashed apples. And that's unhealthy. So I eliminate the caffeine, and immediately I'm sleeping through the night. And I started to do some other things too. By 7 o'clock at night, the phone goes away, and I'm not looking at screens. And then I started making sure that I'm in bed. And this sounds like old man age to me, but I'm in bed by 9, and my eyes pop open at 05. Alarm set to 5:30 just in case I go a little longer. But just those few little things has changed my sleep.
Yeah.
And
I don't doubt that.
Last few weeks since I've been playing with this, feel tremendous.
Yeah, and that's awesome, dude. Congratulations.
So, thank you. I found So I've always postulated that, hey, we are all an experiment of one, right? And you got to tinker. You got to tinker with your life and tinker with the behaviors and things that you're doing in order to make changes.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I've got to do the same thing. Why am I not sleeping? Let's look into it. Let's do some evaluation. And I got to be honest with you, going into it, I was like, oh, I think I have, my wife's like, oh, you snore like crazy. And so I got a little app on my phone that listens to my snoring. Guess who doesn't actually snore that much? You. Yeah. I don't actually. So it's not, what do they call that?
Apnea?
Yeah. It's not sleep apnea.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sleeping because I was so caffeinated and so stressed.
Right.
My body was stressed. My mind was stressed. So I couldn't sleep. So I had to start eliminating some of those stimulants and stresses. And that made a big difference.
Dude, I think that's awesome. I and my message, another message to anyone on the job is you cannot start dealing with any of these issues at the twilight of your career. Hey, if you do, great, but it is going to pay dividends to start now. I'm talking about guys in the academy.
Don't wait like I did.
Right. Like on your days off, we all want to party. We want to have fun. We want to do things, right? We want to, but let's start focusing on our health so that we have longevity. And the earlier you start, the greater results you're going to see. And I think that's awesome. Yeah. My sleep routine is a shower before bed, nice hot shower before bed. Lights go down, my phone at 9 o'clock, it goes to grayscale. That is kind of a mental cue to me that phone's done at 9. So same thing. I try to keep it kind of dark, and I'm in bed. I have, full disclosure, I'm human, right? In my time off, I have gotten into a bad habit of running the TV when I'm sitting in bed, and kind of falling asleep to that. So I need to work on that. And normally, TV's off, nothing, completely dark room, a little bit of fan, cold, all those things. And, my sleep has been great, and often I track it on the Whoop strap, and I'm like, dang it. And what I've actually found, and I think Matthew Walker talks about in the book, is me going to bed about 10:30 and waking up at 6 seems to be my jam. And that could be different for somebody else.
Right.
And that is completely
the biorhythms
cool.
that individuals have.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, as you head back to shift here,
right.
How are you going to manage your sleep on shift? I
go to bed at the same time on shift. And my sleep routine is about the same. So no matter what, I always take a shower before bed, a hot shower before bed, because I think there's the physiological benefit of that blood flow kind of going all over and then getting into the cold environment. And forgive me, I don't remember, but they say that's very beneficial to have a hot shower and then get into bed in the cool air, and as long as you're sleeping in a cool place, which fire stations are cold. So I always do that. Lights are off. If anything, I will read a little bit. I used to do a meditation before bed at the station. I have we have our own rooms at one, no big deal. Sit in the bed and use one of those apps and just do a 5-minute meditation and kind of down regulate. You could get interrupted. And I think that's the biggest thing with us, obviously, is some people are very anticipatory of, man, we're going to get a call tonight. We're going to get a call tonight. Like I'm in a fortunate place where we do pretty good at night. Not always. It's definitely busier. But you got to break that cycle of anticipation and still prep yourself for a good night's sleep. And if it happens, awesome. If it doesn't. But the next day and this day after, you need to stay in that cycle and have good sleep hygiene at home. And I think that's where you get a win. Do you come off shift and take a nap, or do you? I haven't in the past, but as I've kind of progressed in my career, I've allowed myself to take a nap if I've had a rough shift. Before, I would just power through. And now, my wife is kind of a catalyst to that too. She's like, yeah, you need to take a freaking nap. And I've said, all right, I'm going to go take, I think, what's he say? Like an hour and 30-minute nap so you can get through your sleep cycles. Right. Like just run that nap and then go from there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've always, when I have bad nights like that, I'll come home and, I just try to get through the day. And I don't know that it's very healthy because I'm miserable and I'm chippy. And and that's just it, right? You're chippy, so that starts chipping away at your whole total wellness package, right? Your marriage and your kids and those things start eating at you, well, you start burning those relationships up, right? Because you're short, stumbling around like a jerk. And I'm and the thing that and interestingly, my ability to I crave carbs when I'm sleep deprived, like nobody's business. So it's so for me, I know that, and I'm like, just go to sleep, dude. Rather than eating, eat yourself into a giant weight gain cycle. But for me, that's driven by that sleep deprivation. So there's the metabolic effect of good sleep. It affects your hormone regulation and all that stuff. So it's super important to get sleep. And so I think coming off shift after getting your head kicked in, you need to do something. You need to rest. You need to recover. And I think, like you said, getting into a routine where you jump right back into that routine for your days off and maintain it is super important. Yeah, I'll give another shout out to Xendurance. They have a great sleep product deep sleep. It has a couple milligrams of melatonin. It's not overloaded with it. It's got 5-HTP, valerian root, some GABA, all these ingredients that you try to get in separate formulations all in one. And I've given this to a friend of my wife's, not a fireman, has had horrible sleep, like night sweats, and just just feels horrible when she wakes up.
Yeah.
And she texts me about 2 weeks after, and she goes, "This absolutely changed my sleep. I'm not sweating. I'm sleeping through the night." And I've had that experience over and over again. And personally, I don't take it every night. Okay. But when, like, I took it last night because I knew I'm going to have a podcast tomorrow. I want to be sharp, kind of run real hard during the day. And every time on my Whoop strap, again, you have a tangible, measurable result. I'm in the green, and my sleep cycles, like you mentioned before, are deeper.
Yeah.
And so your restorative sleep is just better.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, you mentioned the Whoop thing a couple times. What is that?
So the Whoop strap is just a device like an Oura Ring or a Fitbit or something that will track your activity throughout the day.
Okay.
And for me, I like that. I don't want to get too dialed into always paying attention to it. Like I want to, hey, how do I actually feel? Not just, I need to see, yep, that says I had a bad night's sleep. Like, what I mean? It's useful.
So do you wear it 24/7?
Yeah, you wear it 24/7. You can set activities, like before I get in the cold plunge, I go on my phone, there's an app, and I say, hey, I'm hopping in the cold plunge, and it'll kind of take a snapshot of that time and really look at your heart rate and strain and all that stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it does a great job on sleep. And that's where, for me, if I can see, if I can not only feel the result, but see a tangible result, a good way to do that is when you wake up, start writing down, like, whatever scale you want, 1 through 5, 1 through 10. Like, how do you feel like you slept last night?
Right.
Like, 6. And then you look and you're, in, 80%, sleep. And you're like, man, that's pretty good. Yeah. So you start, getting numbers that are close to one another. And, it's a great way to actually see how you feel.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, the biofeedback is huge.
Biofeedback. Yeah, you're much smarter words than I have. Thank you.
So back in the day when I was doing endurance racing, I would have handwritten training journals, and I would track, like, here's the workouts that I want to be doing. Here's how I felt. Here's how I performed. And I would document all the, data points from training workouts and whatever, the performance elements. And so I think there's a lot of value. You can talk about, like, committing to a practice of exercise or nutrition or whatever. Like, why do we jump on a scale? We want to see the trend.
Yeah.
Right? We want to see what our body is doing. And so it's important, I think, even with sleep hygiene, like, how did I really sleep?
Yeah.
Here I am years going, man, I think I snore like crazy. And my wife's like, yeah, you snore. She doesn't hear me snoring because she's asleep.
Right.
So she only hears me snoring during certain times.
Right.
And so all that aside, like, getting some measurables are really important for our ability to know where we're going. And then you make adjustments.
Totally.
Right? You're like, hey, that clearly if I go to bed at this hour and I do these things prior to it, I had a great night's sleep. That one day I didn't do that, my night got wrecked.
What's nice about this too is within the app, when you wake up in the, it detects it. It's auto. I don't know what kind of voodoo is in there, but it does. It knows, like, when you go to bed and when you wake up. I'm like, no kidding.
That's
like
amazing.
That's like right on. But there is a little journal built into it with just check marks that you can say, like, yeah, I took a melatonin. I did breath work before bed. I took anti-inflammatory, but like I had sex last night,
right?
And how did that affect like all these different variables? And then at the end of the month, this is great. I have no affiliation with Whoop, but at the end of the month, it gives you a record, like, and it'll show you, like, these trends helped you, these trends hurt you.
Yeah.
So it's a real nice overview of how something is working, especially in the sleep.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to warn guys is just because you had 5 after midnight and there is a way out of that, right?
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, I'm getting my head kicked in, so I'm resigned to never sleeping well.
No.
Right? You gotta work on that and because your health depends on it.
Guys, yeah. If there's a takeaway from this podcast, is to open your mind up to being able to look at different modalities in your career to help you mentally, physically, learn how to deregulate and learn how to set yourself up for success for not only next shift, but for the next phases of your life. Like, you have to start paying attention to it. And just if you're at a super busy station, we all know them. Those guys at those stations really, really need to start to pay attention to their health, their markers, and what they're doing on their days off, and how they can help their body recoup. And I think it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a big piece. And pay attention to what you eat. Pay attention to how you exercise, to what you're putting in your body, supplementation. I'm going to throw a discount. I'll throw Xendurance.
Well, let's talk about Xendurance for a second. So I know you've been doing a bunch of stuff with them
I have an independent business with them.
Oh, okay.
So, it was a story where Jason Sinclair is the CEO. He lives here in the Valley. And he reached out to me. He saw me on Instagram. I had an old shirt from Tops. Shout out to Tops Physical Therapy.
Love them.
Yeah, they're great. Amy and they're all great. But they were affiliated with them way back in the day. So I had like an old school T-shirt, old school Xendurance logo. Jason saw it. He shot me a message and said, "Dude, I need to get you a new T-shirt." I'm like, "Sweet." And
I can always use new threads.
Yeah, man, I love T-shirts. I love swag. Like, who doesn't, right? And but with that, he sent the Extreme Endurance in there, and I had heard about it. A couple guys at the station had used it. Big in the CrossFit world, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna give this a whirl and see how I do." And gosh dang it, like, the first thing I noticed was I was less sore. Just less sore after working out, and I was like, well, that's cool. And then I kind of dove into the research on it and watched a couple of videos and saw the increase in VO2 max and the heart benefits, the anti-inflammatory benefits, and then the reduction, like we talked about, the reduction in oxidative stress. I'm like, that's awesome, and then honestly, I fell off again on the product, ran out of product, and like, whatever. And Jason's credit, man, he kept on it. Like, he saw me again and shot me I don't know if he shot me another shirt. I think he did shoot me another shirt. I'm like, this dude, I'm going to reach out to him. So we had a chat, and really one of the most genuine people you meet. He's CEO of this company. We talked about supplements for it was like 45 minutes. I was at station just kind of walking back and forth pacing, and we went deep onto a lot of Xendurance's products. He said, "Hey, these are a couple things we don't have. Here's what I recommend you take." And right then and there, I was like, "Hey, man, this guy actually cares about your health." Like, he could easily say, "Oh, we can cover you, A to Z," and he didn't. And so I asked him about being an ambassador, and he said, "Absolutely." And that's kind of how it started. And then, to my surprise, Jason and Sandy Kellen, who's the founder, he is an Olympic bobsledder, developed Extreme Endurance, asked me to speak at their summit. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to speak at. Guys, I mean, why do you want me to speak at your summit? And he's like, hey, we want you to speak. I'm like, what topic? He's like, you pick it. I'm like, okay, they're great. Thanks. I'm off injured. And that's what I kind of, again, injury is a great teacher, or it's a great provider, a gatekeeper, a door opens, and if you let it. And I sat down and I thought about my speech, and that's where I thought about my dad and myself, and where I put myself, on the path of am I going to let these things shorten my life? What can I do to mitigate that? And that's how I came up with the speech I did about talking about your why. And it went real well. I people came up after and said that was impactful and powerful, and I'm happy it was, because in my mind, not for my own benefit, but if that moved the needle for somebody else to go, yeah, I need to implement a change and find something, and it was a hard speech for me to give.
Why is that?
Because when I was practicing it, I was losing my shit. I was bawling when I was talking about my dad. It was almost cathartic for me to do that, because I hadn't talked about it ever. Yeah. Maybe once in a while with my wife, but never in public. And shit, I got choked up there. I get a little choked up now, because that and that choked up stuff is good, because that's what drives you. That's what you need to drive you towards a goal, and to not only drive you, but to maintain your focus, and it was a great experience all around. And then they asked me to be on their team and or become a distributor with them, and it was an easy decision because the products are friggin' awesome. There's a lot of snake oil out there. There's a lot of companies that don't care about what they put in their products, don't care about living. Well, let's put it this way. They had the same mission as me. Like, part of my speech was, I want to have a health span, not a lifespan. And I think that's borrowed from Peter Attia or somebody like that. But literally their slogan is live healthier longer. And research dosage in their products. They look at the synergy between ingredients, all informed sport, informed choice tested. I mean, it is products that are trusted by Olympic athletes, by professional athletes, and just aren't out there in the general population as much. And they said, listen, dude, we'd like you to help us break into the fire service, because we think it's important for that population, public safety, to have solid products, solid nutrition for longevity. And I'm like, that's my mission.
There it is.
I'm in.
Well, so if folks want to find more information about Xendurance, where would they go?
They can go to my Instagram. It's just Natervision. I have a link tree up there. It'll bring you right to the page. You can go to xendurance.com too. Check it out. My discount code is Natervision15. Gives you 15% off, so you can use that. But yeah, I guess we'll throw something else in the show notes. We'll throw a link in there.
Yep.
But okay. yeah, check out my page, and there's the link tree there.
Right on.
Yeah.
Nate, thanks, brother.
No, thank you, man. It was an awesome conversation.
Always
I always
good
love
chat
it.
with you.
Definitely.
Right on. Hey, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks, Nate, for being our guest on this episode. And if you are enjoying this podcast, get on over to whatever platform you enjoy most. Subscribe. This podcast will drop in the middle of the night when you least expect it. Additionally, listen to the lessons learned here today. Find things that you can do to improve your life, to find ways to make yourself more well, more tuned in. Just listen to your body. And be the experiment of one. Don't be afraid to make changes. Go on out there and get some.